It's funny how some passages of Scripture can really sneak up on you. I mean, I've read through James a bunch of times, but these excerpts from chapter 2, well, they've really got me thinking this time around.
It's a part of the Bible that often sparks debate, and rightfully so. It digs into what it really means to live out your faith.
Yeah, it's not just like checking a box, right?
Right, James isn't saying just believe and you're good. He links faith directly to action, specifically to loving your neighbor as yourself, which he calls, get this, a royal law.
A royal law, it's like, wow, that's serious business. But then doesn't that kind of make it transactional? Like, are we trying to earn something here? Because I thought that whole grace thing meant we didn't have to.
That's the very tension James is getting at. Earlier in the chapter, he makes a point to say that a person is considered righteous by what they do, not by faith alone. So it's not about racking up good deeds to get on God's good side.
Okay, so less about earning and more about what, like proof of something deeper.
It's more that genuine faith naturally shows itself through action, through love. It's an outward sign of an inward change.
So then how does that change happen? Where do we even start?
I think it begins with grasping this idea of justification. We hear it a lot, especially in church circles, but it can be kind of confusing. Basically, it means being made right in God's eyes, not because of anything we've done, but purely because of what Christ already did.
So like a get out of jail free card,
Right.
but for our relationship with God.
You got it. And being in that right relationship changes everything. How we see ourselves, how we see the world. From that place of being declared righteous, of being totally loved, that's where we find the power to love others that same way.
So our actions become a response to that love, not a way to get it in the first place. But how does this loop back to that whole royal law thing about loving our neighbor?
It's pretty straightforward when you think about it. James is saying if your faith is real, it'll affect how you treat other people. You'll be moved to act with compassion, to show kindness, to be generous with your time and what you have. It's about recognizing the value in every single person, no matter what.
Okay, sounds good on paper. But in reality, that's got to be tough, right? I mean, life's messy. We all meet people who drive us crazy, who are just plain difficult. How do we actually live out this royal law when things get rough? What does that look like day to day?
And that is where those examples of Abraham and Rahab become super important.
I'll be honest, those stories have always seemed a little, I don't know, superhuman. Like Abraham packing up and leaving everything just because God said so, or Rahab putting her own neck on the line for those spies. It's impressive and all, but how's that supposed to help me when I'm dealing with, say, a coworker who drives me nuts, or a neighbor who cranks up the polka music at all hours?
You're right on the money there. It's easy to get caught up in those big, dramatic displays of faith. But the real test, the place where it really counts, is in those ordinary, everyday moments. And that's what makes James's message so powerful. He's not saying we have to pull off some grand feat to earn our way in. He's talking about a change that starts deep down and works its way out, beginning with the people right there in our lives.
So it's less about becoming some kind of faith superhero and more about letting it shape how we handle even the little things.
Exactly. Choosing kindness instead of getting judgmental, having patience even when it's hard, especially with the people closest to us. Think about Rahab for a second. Talk about a tough crowd. She was living in a culture, in a whole city, that was completely against everything she was starting to believe. And yet, even in that environment, she showed incredible guts and compassion.
It's true. It wasn't just giving those guys a place to crash. She did it knowing that her own people could turn on her for it. Going against the grain like that, risking everything to help these strangers. That took guts.
And that is the kind of radical love James is talking about, the kind that goes beyond our differences, our prejudices, even what we think we can handle. It's a love that's willing to take chances, to show grace, even when someone doesn't deserve it, to see the humanity in every single person, no matter what.
So then, how do we actually cultivate that kind of love? Especially these days, when it seems like everywhere you turn, it's division and negativity. It's so easy to get sucked into those outrage cycles, to just stay in our own little bubbles.
It's a real challenge, no doubt about it. But I think it starts with being honest with ourselves. Recognizing our own biases, those knee-jerk reactions to judge, the times when we think we're right and everyone else is wrong. And it takes a conscious effort to step outside our comfort zones, to talk to people who are different, people who challenge the way we see things.
That's where humility comes in, isn't it? Being able to say, hey, I don't have all the answers, and actually meaning it. Being open to learning from someone, even if they see the world completely differently than you do.
Absolutely. And that's another huge piece of this royal law of love. Coming to others with that humility, willing to listen and learn, even when you don't agree on everything. It's about realizing that everybody's on their own journey, and every single person has something to offer.
It's interesting. We've been talking about this from a faith perspective, but this whole idea of loving your neighbor as yourself,
Hmm.
that feels like it goes way beyond religion, you know? Like it's really about basic human decency, about building a world that's more just, more compassionate for everybody.
Can agree more. It's a universal principle. You can call it the royal law, the golden rule, just plain common sense. It all comes down to this. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Be kind, be compassionate, be respectful, even when it's the last thing you feel like doing. Sounds simple, right?
Yeah.
But it's got the power to change the world.
It really does feel like we're at a turning point, both personally and as a society.
Mm.
And the path we choose, the way we decide to treat each other, that's what's going to shape what comes next.
No doubt. And that can feel overwhelming, but it's also incredibly empowering because it means every single one of us has a part to play. Every little thing, every choice, it's a chance to tip the scales towards love, towards compassion, towards a better outcome.
It's about recognizing that even the smallest acts of kindness matter. A smile for someone you don't know, lending a hand to someone who needs it, being willing to really listen with an open mind and an open heart.
Exactly. Remembering that we're all in this together and the way we treat each other, that matters. Big time.
I love that James doesn't just leave us hanging with a bunch of you shoulds and you should nots. He gives us a way to track how we're doing in this whole faith and works department. He talks about how mercy triumphs over judgment. That's such a powerful image, and man, does it ever feel relevant right now. It's like he's saying, hey, we're all going to mess this up sometimes. Nobody's perfect. We're going to fall short of this royal law more often than we'd like to admit. But instead of beating ourselves up about it, getting stuck in that guilt and shame cycle, we can choose a different way. We can choose mercy for ourselves and other people, offering that same grace and understanding that we've been given.
Exactly. And that is where the real freedom is, not in trying to be perfect, but in embracing that grace for ourselves, for everyone around us. In that place of mercy and forgiveness, that's where we start truly reflecting God's heart.
Because at the end of the day, isn't that the whole point? It's not about racking up brownie points for being good. It's about reflecting something so much bigger than us, something that can change not just our own human lives, but the whole world around us for the better.
You nailed it. It's about recognizing how connected we all are and how much our actions really do affect other people. Every time we choose love, every time we choose compassion, every time we choose to put this royal law into practice, even in the small stuff, we're becoming part of something bigger, part of the solution, part of the healing, part of the hope that our world needs so badly.
You know what's striking me about all this, going back to James 2, it's not just a list of rules or some dry theological debate. It's an invitation, you know.
A challenge, yeah,
Yeah.
but also a huge source of hope. Beautifully put. We all have the power to make a difference, every single one of us. To be people who bring love and change into a world that feels starved for both.
This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for really digging into this with us and helping us uncover so much timeless wisdom in this passage.
My pleasure entirely. These are the kinds of conversations that are always worth having.
And to everyone listening, we hope this deep dive has gotten you thinking, maybe challenged you a little, and hopefully even inspired you to get out there and live a little more boldly, a little more kindly, a little more like the people we were created to be. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deeper.